Here to discuss, Liz Oyer, former DOJ pardon attorney and former federal public defender. Ambassador Norm Eisen, founder and executive chair of Democracy Defenders Fund, former special counsel and special assistant to President Obama. MS Now Capitol Hill reporter Kevin Fry joins us here as well. Norm, just first to you, what do you make of this Oval Office spectacle? Not just the fact that it's the first time that you're seeing someone ring the bell from the Oval Office, but at the same time, as it just comes off of financial disclosures where he made $2 billion since coming back to office. I mean, optics.
To me, those bells were alarm bells ringing like in a bank robbery. President Trump's corruption should sound an alarm for all of the American people, Ali. Look at these statistics. I have a new bipartisan op-ed on MS Now as we speak with Richard Painter, who was the Bush ethics counsel, myself, the Obama ethics czar, Ginny Cantor did that for Clinton. Trump made $636 million on his Trump meme coin alone, while according to the New York Times, American investors lost $3.8 billion. That coin has lost 95% of its value. We've never seen a president make overall $2.2 billion. He's raking in cash from Gulf states that have the strongest interest in the Iran war, like the United Arab Emirates, while taking secret investments in a Trump-affiliated entity, World Liberty Financial, over $500 million. Someone has to pay the price for that. We're paying that domestically with these massive losses, and internationally, the cost of the Iran war and the devastation. Nothing is free. Those are alarm bells to me.
Alarm bells, but it also might be a starting bell for those in Congress who are looking at the fact that maybe Democrats are able to take control of the House chamber come November. And if that is the case, then I imagine we are going to see a lot of oversight. And I wonder what one of the first questions you would ask is, jumping off of what Norm is saying, of what the disclosures have told us, of what we've seen just from the Oval Office.
Well, I think one of the things that Congress really needs to look at is, where are the guardrails failing? Where are the guardrails that are supposed to prevent the president from using public office for his own personal financial benefit? And you could see, if you trace back to the beginning of this administration, that they have intentionally eroded many of those guardrails. The Justice Department is sort of the epicenter of that, because that institution is charged with regulating and enforcing the law in the spaces in which Trump is heavily invested, including cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency is an area where they have shut down the cryptocurrency enforcement task force. They have stopped prosecuting criminal cases involving cryptocurrency. They have pardoned people who have been convicted of defrauding investors in cryptocurrency. And all of this is to make it easy for the president to make money hand over fist, and for his sons to do the same in the cryptocurrency industry. And that is because the guardrails that are supposed to prevent those sorts of conflicts of interest have been intentionally stripped away by Trump's complicit lackeys in the Department of Justice.
Even during today, when he was taking some questions, at one point he said, I've become a big crypto guy, and I could almost hear Democrats cutting the attack ads, because it comes at a point, Kevin, where they have already been trying to center corruption and this idea that the systems in this country are built to only benefit a select few, highlighting the idea of the haves and have-nots. And I would love for the control room to play one of the sound bites of the ways that Democrats are trying to craft this midterm message, and we'll talk about its efficacy on the back end. Let's play that.
In a few months, the American people will go to the polls. And Donald Trump, he knows exactly what's coming. He knows that Congress, accountable to the people, will put an end to the lies, to the corruption, to the sale of this government to the highest bidder.
While he sits in that gilded Oval Office, he's not focused on solving your problems, getting you health care, putting a roof over your head, driving down your costs. Instead, he's focused on trying to figure out how he can make a buck for him and his family.
The president of the United States has made more money on crypto than crypto companies in the past year. There is something fundamentally wrong that has to be fixed with both the executive and the legislative branch when it comes to profit.
And as you know, there are.
And I would be bad at my job if I didn't point out that, yes, they have a message in common there, but all of those people are also probably people we're going to be talking about as Democratic presidential candidates at some point in the future, too. But let's stay in the present for a moment, because if that's the message now, and Democrats are able to take back the House, What do you think the first move is that someone like a Jamie Raskin atop the Judiciary Committee or a Robert Garcia atop of Oversight makes?
Well, I mean, look, one, we're a far way removed from, Jimmy Carter apocryphally getting rid of his peanut farm. But Democrats are already signaling, one, they plan on subpoenaing a lot. And when they have the gavels, they will actually have the power to enforce those and try to get the documents and records and interviews that they actually want. And they see this as a 900-plus page document that is filled with items ripe for the picking as they try to make this case to not only the American people, but also to lawyers to get the information that they want. And this does fit into kind of the main central pillars that Democrats have already been lining up as their midterm message. Trump is basically filling in the blanks for them with some of these recent comments, which have been, we're for affordability, Republicans don't care about your bottom line, and the White House is corrupt and doesn't care about anyone other than the millionaires and billionaires, a little bit borrowing there from the Bernie Sanders of the last decade or so. And this is right within, you can watch the campaign ads being made in real time with some of what he's saying.
There's also, Liz, an Axios report about Democrats plotting what they're calling a hostile audit of not only Trump's finances, but those of his inner circle. I mean, Kevin is talking about the subpoenas that they're going to want to issue. And given just the glimpse that you got into how this DOJ was working in its early weeks, I mean, how do you imagine that subpoenas are going to land? And also, just given the sheer number of conflicts of interest and corruption that we are hearing and learning about in this disclosure, I mean, how are people to even keep track?
Well, there's so much to subpoena. There's so much to look at. There's so much to investigate. The question is what to do with all of it. I mean, the immediate problem is that Congress doesn't have, the Democrats don't have the subpoena power, so they can't do that right now. But assuming that they win in the midterms, they can issue some subpoenas, they can do some real investigating. The question will then be what comes of all of that investigation. I think it's important to make a historical record of all of the corruption, of all the money that has been stolen from our government, money that belongs to the American people, that has been misappropriated by Donald Trump and his family. And it may be that that's all these investigations amount to, is an accounting. But that accounting is important for purposes of history. There is a contingent of people that are going to want to see criminal prosecutions and that sort of liability. At some point, we need to decide as a country to move forward and not have the Justice Department and Congress engaged perpetually in these backward-looking investigations. My hope is that Congress will get us to a place where we understand the historical record and the American people can use the elections to hold our political leadership accountable.
Norm
looks intrigued.
I think that Congress ought to look at the scandals that have broken through. We've worked on litigating many of them and stopping the wrongdoing at Democracy Defenders Fund and Democracy Defenders Action. The $1.8 billion slush fund case, where 35 bipartisan former federal judges, nobody had ever seen anything like it, went to the court, opened a fraud on the court investigation. The court in Florida is currently looking at that. The Kennedy Center case, where he tried to take a whole building. Again, we litigated that case. We got his name off the Kennedy Center. The Epstein Files case, our Democracy Defenders colleague Katie Fang is enforcing the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Start with the biggest. She just got an order from Judge Sullivan today ordering additional briefing on revealing those files. Start with the biggest scandals, expose them, get the rest of the information out there, and then pivot. Let's have strong statutory guardrails. DOJ has too much, and the president, too much flexibility, these big financial disclosures. Presidents should provide real-time information about stock trades, for example. They shouldn't be able to trade in crypto if they're regulating crypto. Let's put laws in that stop this in the future. I think that'll be very popular with the American people.
A tall order for Congress. Go ahead.
I was just going to add, two things on that. One, they have been struggling for the better decade and a half. Actually, our editor and I were talking about this just a little bit ago, to do anything when it comes to just stock trading restrictions in Congress, let alone the conversation then extending to the executive branch or to the judiciary branch as well, to try to put some confines on that. And on top of that, you would need, at least in the short term, to get a president that is willing to sign off on any of these things. So this is definitely much more of a post-2028 conversation if you can get necessary majorities in both chambers to begin with.
I was going to say, I've covered multiple iterations of the let's ban stock trading push on Capitol Hill, and I have a feeling I've got a few more pushes to continue covering. I did not get a chance to read to the audience Norm's great piece that he teased, but it is on ms.now right now. You should go read it. Kevin.